Everybody in town knew and loved Tommy. An exemplary young man. He was married and the father of one little girl, Maureen, whose godmother I was. He and his wife, Betty, were the best friends I had in town. He owned his little home, and having saved his money, he went into the grocery business with the same ambition a young white man would have had. One of the morning papers held back its edition in order to supply its readers with the details of that lynching. It said that Thomas Moss begged for his life for the sake of his wife and his child and his unborn baby. That Calvin McDowell got hold of one of the guns of the lynchers, and because they couldn't loosen his grip, a shot was fired into his closed fist. There's a strong belief among us that the criminal court judge himself was one of the lynchers.
Hello?
Welcome.
This is of the two cities.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Hello. If we were going to do a special on strong badass women, we had to do a segment on Ida B. Wells, because without her, nothing would have gotten done. Truthfully, I am surprised that there aren't more monuments for Wells, or even recognition of her work at the same level of Frederick Douglass. But, as we all know, the work of women struggle to get recognized for their greatness. However, let's take a moment to appreciate a strong, brave woman in a time and place where being strong and being brave would get you killed. Let's take a moment to find a hero, an image of who we should all aspire to be. Let's take a moment to appreciate Ida B. Wells. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this badass woman mini episode. Ida B. Wells was born on July 16, 1862, in Holly Springs, Mississippi, several months before the Emancipation Proclamation. She was one of 8 children. Her father was a master carpenter and worked for the advancement of black people. He was very interested in politics and became a member of the Loyal League. He attended Shaw University in Holly Springs, now Russ College, but he dropped out to help his family. Both of Wells's parents were active in the Republican Party during the Reconstruction era. Mind you, the Republican Party is a lot different from the Republican Party we know today. In 1876, her parents, as well as her infant brother, caught the yellow fever epidemic, leaving 16-year-old Wells and her other siblings orphaned. Despite being so young, Wells became a teacher at a local black elementary school, so she and her siblings could stay together. Her grandmother and several family friends babysat the kids while Wells would teach. Wells's anger towards segregation and racism sprouted once working at that school. For example, white teachers were paid $80 a month and she was paid only $30. This discrimination made her more interested in the politics of race and improving the education of black people. In 1883, she attended summer sessions at Fisk University and attended Lemoyne-Owen College. This helped feed her thriving mind about the issues of women's and black people's rights. On May 4, 1884, a train conductor ordered Wells to give up her seat in the first-class ladies' car and move to the smoking car, which was already crowded. The year before, the Supreme Court had ruled against the Federal Civil Rights Act of 1875, which had banned racial discrimination in public accommodations. When Wells refused to give up her seat, the conductor and 2 men dragged her out of the car. By the way, when they were dragging her out of the car, she bit them. Could you say badass? I think it's spelled W-E-L-L-S. Wells wrote a newspaper article for The Living Way about her treatment on the train. In Memphis, she hired an attorney to sue the railroad. When the lawyer was paid off by the railroad, she hired another. She won her case on December 24, 1884, when the court granted her $500, but then lost it when the railroad company appealed for a second case. Wells also was ordered to pay court costs. While teaching elementary school, Wells was offered an editorial position for the Evening Star in Washington, D.C. She also wrote weekly articles for The Living Way, a weekly newspaper under the pen name Lola. In 1889, she became a co-owner and editor of the Free Speech and Headlight, an anti-segregation newspaper. In 1891, Wells was fired from her job due to her articles that criticized conditions in the colored schools of the region. But being a badass woman, she focused her full attention to The Living Way and Free Speech and Headlight. In 1892, a friend of Wells, Thomas Moss, was robbed by 3 white men. During the altercation, the 3 men were shot and injured. Moss and 2 other men were arrested. However, a white lynch mob stormed the jail and killed Wells's friends. In response to the loss of her friends, Wells wrote, "There is therefore only one thing to do, save our money and leave the town, which would neither protect our lives and our property, nor give us a fair trial in the courts, but will takes us out and murders us in cold blood when accused by white persons." More than 6,000 people listened to Wells and left Memphis. Others organized boycotts of white-owned businesses. This sparked a solution of warning and protecting black people, and in 1909 she helped found the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. She began to research the charges of these crimes. She spoke on the issue at various black women's clubs and raised more than $500 to investigate the murders and published the results. Not surprisingly, Wells found little basis for the lynchings or murder of black people, and discovered that the main excuse for the murders would be false accounts of sexual assault on white women. This alibi seemed to have partly accounted for white America's collective acceptance or silence on the lynching, as well as its acceptance by many in the educated African American community. In this clip is historian Mia Bay.
Wells became a leader in anti-lynching and essentially almost invented it, I would say, because of a sort of terrible personal experience she had. It was a terrible lynching in Memphis in which 3 black men were killed, and one of them was a man named Thomas Moss, a local businessman as well as a local mailman who was a friend of Wells along with his wife. Wells is out of town when this happens, and she comes back to find black people fleeing Memphis, her friend Thomas dead along with 2 other men. She had been thinking that, she would live in the South and she would work to make it a better place. But when she looked at someone like Thomas Moss, who had been a devout churchgoer, taught Sunday school, invested in his own business, done everything that the sort of world said that blacks needed to do to get ahead, and then had ended up being lynched, she began to question whether you could really do anything in the South.
She continued to be fearless throughout her career. On May 27, 1892, a white mob destroyed the offices of the Free Speech and Headlight. Together with Frederick Douglass and other black leaders, she organized a black boycott of the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago for its failure to collaborate with the black community on exhibits to represent African American life. In 1895, Wells married attorney Ferdinand L. Barnett. She kept her last name, which made her one of the first married Americans to do that. Wells tried to explain that white women's honor was an excuse to go after African American men. Her call for all genders and races to own up to their issues showed African American women that they should open up about their rights. With her work and her ability to not give a damn, as well as give a damn, proves that she was the biggest feminist writer and badass. Despite all of the barriers she faced, she powerhoused through those walls, ultimately creating and evolving the mind frames that we have today. No wasn't an answer to her, because as a woman and as a woman of color, she was already surrounded with no's. And with no path to walk down, she had to create her own. And if you think that line is cheesy, this is what she had to say. "I'd rather go down in history as one lone black woman who dared to tell the government that it had done a dastardly thing than to save my skin by taking back what I said." Music is Tomorrow by Ben Sound. You can find out more about us and our other episodes on our Facebook page, website, Instagram, Twitter, and our email at talesoftheNumber2citiespodcast@gmail.com. Please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. It really helps us a lot. And also, thanks for listening.